Thank you for joining us on the program as we highlight the top stories we followed in the course of the week. Now it is time to reflect on efforts aimed at containing the spread of coronavirus in what remains a battle between reopening the economy and holding position a little longer for safety's sake. While it's 1 week gone and one more to go for extended easing of lockdown in Lagos, Ogun and Abuja, it remains a long walk to normal life as we've always known it. Now, the spread of the new coronavirus in Nigeria is on the rise, with latest figures from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control putting confirmed cases at over 7,000. But by deploying mass sensitization and dwelling on personal hygiene, one state is edging closer to point zero. We'll tell you more about that in the course of the program tonight. Nigeria's Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 hoping to delicately balance safety and survival before the economy fully reopens. Now, the PTF on COVID-19 say they are aware of the impact of the lockdown on the informal sector, but the country has to go through a gradual phasing of lockdown so the health sector isn't burdened.
Another 2 weeks added to the first phase of the gradual and phased easing of the lockdown. But there was significant progress recorded in the first phase, despite obvious enforcement bottlenecks and other compliance issues. This decision is the outcome of recommendations made to the President by the task force saddled with the responsibility of coordinating the national response plan. Again, there will be intensified efforts to alleviate socio-economic difficulties caused by this extension.
The level of compliance has been reviewed and a specific directive has been issued to the security agencies to carry out strict enforcement of all measures. These include the nationwide curfew between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., the ban on interstate travels, and the wearing of face masks and coverings in public places. The security agents are, however, urged to be mindful of the human rights of citizens, while citizens are equally urged to encourage and recognize the dangers posed to self, their loved ones, and the entire community if they fail to take responsibility.
After recording the highest figure in one day, health authorities are closing the gaps in testing, tracing, isolating, and treatment of confirmed cases. Statistics from the Center of Disease Control indicates that Lagos, Kano, and Borno accounts for 52% of the COVID-related deaths in the country. The biggest worry for the Presidential Task Force will be transitioning from a lockdown to a safe reopening.
How do we restart our economies safely? How do we move from the narrative of a lockdown to a narrative of a safe reopening so that people can go back to their livelihoods while still staying safe as possible from this virus? How do we do that in the farms? How do we do that in the markets? How do we do that in the schools? How do we do that in transport? How do we do that in aviation? And really, this has to be our focus in the next few weeks.
At the daily media briefing, the Minister of Foreign Affairs announced a significant breakthrough achieved in providing welfare for evacuees. He disclosed that the Central Bank of Nigeria and Nigeria's oil company, NNPC, will now pick the welfare bills of returnees in mandatory isolation. This must indeed be a relief after the government was hit with a barrage of attacks, criticizing its insistence that evacuees must pay for their hotel accommodation and feeding.
We found ourselves in a situation where either we stopped evacuations for lack of funding, but we knew that there were so many people who were desperate to get back, or we passed on the costs to the evacuees. But what I did say was that I would spare no effort in trying to source for funding from whatever source we could find it.
In the coming days, the operational guidelines for the extended phase of the lockdown will be released, but government continues to escalate health advisories on precautionary measures to stay safe and flatten the curve of transmission.
Now joining me to discuss this from our Abuja studio is TVC News Deputy Bureau Chief Femi Akande, and I have here with me TVC News Executive Editor Uzonna Ononye. Good to have you gentlemen on the program tonight. So let's begin with you now, Femi. First off, let's look at, before we get to dwell into the focus of today, let's look at the Muslims. Today they celebrated Ramadan. Give us a sense of how the Eid prayers were held in Abuja despite the pandemic.
Yes, Esther, it was an unusual Eid celebration for Muslim faithful here, not just in Abuja, all over the country. They had to adhere to the advisory from the National Center for Disease Control. And indeed, the Sultan of Sokoto warning against public gathering, against opening of mosque for Eid prayers. All of these was there was compliance with all of these all over the country. We even saw President Muhammadu Buhari observing Eid in his house privately, just with family members. I also adhering to the social physical distancing principle or physical distancing guideline by the NCDC. It was a quiet Eid Mubarak Eid celebration for Muslim faithful here in Abuja, though in some other places we still saw some of them gathered to celebrate, but overall there has been a considerable, I would say, a considerable level of compliance with this directive, Esther.
Now let's look at the focus of today, which is gradual easing of the lockdown. Talk to us about how citizens in Abuja have been faring with this new norm.
Well, compliance has been very, very difficult on the part of citizens, and indeed this has also been a major headache for government. That is why they had to extend the first phase of the lockdown, because they couldn't achieve and even guarantee 100% compliance that would now help the country transition into the second phase of the lockdown that will now see a further reopening of the economy. Well, now we still have to deal with the first phase where just certain sectors of the economy are allowed to operate, including essential workers. All of this will still be in place for another 2 weeks before the Presidential Task Force reconsiders the level of compliance and then make recommendations to the President, and then that will determine the next line of action if the economy will be reopened or further strict measures will be applied to ensure that the curve of transmission is desperately flattened.
All right, now Uzonna, let's look at this measure of reopening the economy fully, which is supposed to be the second gradual phase of the lockdown. But do you think perhaps we are ready for this, because we've been having cases of the surge in case, we're having rising number of cases of the coronavirus? Do you think perhaps we are ready for this second phase of the gradual easing of lockdown?
Presently, the government says Nigeria is not ready yet, or Nigerians are not ready yet for the total reopening of the lockdown or easing of the lockdown. But there are very key questions that government must ask and get answers. If you ease off lockdown completely and reopen the economy, do you have the capacity to manage any eventuality? There is no specific assurance that if lockdown is eased off, everything will not hit everyone in the face. So government will need to answer those questions. What is the testing capacity? Do we have infrastructure on the ground to handle in case there is an escalation of numbers or a quick spike in numbers? And the health sector itself is currently in a bit of a situation. We hear today doctors in certain areas will want to go on strike. The next day, currently, the health workers at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital are threatening to go on strike from yesterday. And all of these are situations that government must fix before they consider a total reopening of the economy, because our people are still dealing with the fundamentals, so physical distancing, wearing the mask, and even the hygiene, personal hygiene issues are still confronting, I mean, everyone. We see it everywhere. People have not come to terms with all of those things that are, those advisories from the health sector, from the authorities. So until all of those are sorted out, it might be a huge risk talking about complete reopening of the economy.
And talking about, complete reopening, there's this talk of the safe reopening that the NCDC chairman talked about. What modalities do you think should be followed already? We have schools being shut, churches are yet to reopen, markets, there are certain days that they, open sales. What modalities do you think should be followed if we are to fully reopen this sector of the economy?
Some people had actually canvassed the idea of herd immunity, throw it open, that people will develop the antibody naturally. Incidentally, the virus is such that majority of the people that will get infected will recover naturally without any help. It's just a few that will need serious assistance. So there's a lot in front of government, particularly the health authorities, to consider before they take any decision. But the major problem is the poor infrastructure that is still existing, and even the handling of the health workers themselves is still not up to standard of what it should be for them to consider absolute reopening of the economy. And
so all those factors must be in place if we're to consider reopening.
Those are the things that government would think about.
All right, now Femi, let's wrap up in this segment with you now. So far, the FCT has about 469 cases, way below the number of confirmed cases in Lagos. And how are citizens abiding by the safety guidelines of social distancing, face masks, and of course, social gatherings, if at all we are talking about, fully reopening the economy?
Yes, we have seen some of these happening in public places, motor parks, even banks now in the FCT, and I believe that is the case in other parts of the country where there's a certain number of people allowed at a particular time to get into the banking hall to make transactions, even at major supermarkets. And before all of this happens, a thermometer, temperature thermometer is placed at the doorstep, where temperatures of people coming in are checked, their hands sanitized. They must have their face masks on before they are allowed to carry out the normal businesses. The Presidential Task Force, and indeed the government, is saying that people will have to take personal responsibility before this curve will be flattened. They are even beginning to consider community ownership and management of these cases. Maybe in the coming days, the primary healthcare centers would now be in charge of managing COVID-19 cases, especially the mild and moderate cases. Then the severe cases will be handled by the federal government at the designated isolation centers for COVID-19. So these measures are beginning to take shape, and once all of these plans are perfected, hopefully the federal government might begin to consider a safe reopening of the economy, and businesses would again get back to normal, because people can't wait. A lot of businesses have been hit by this whole lockdown, a lot of losses incurred, even for the federal government, not just individual businesses. Even for the federal government, we had the Minister of Finance saying that the country will go into recession. So there's a whole lot of concern now about the health of the economy, not just the health of the country and citizens as we speak. And government and indeed citizens are concerned about these realities, and are making desperate efforts to ensure that, the impact won't be hard felt.
Right. Thank you very much, Femi Akande, Deputy Bureau Chief, Abuja. We appreciate your insights on the program. Still ahead on the show, the spread of the new coronavirus in Nigeria is on the rise, with the latest figures of the Nigeria Center for Disease Control putting the confirmed cases at more than 7,000. But by deploying mass sensitization and dwelling on personal hygiene, one state is edging closer to point zero. I'll tell you more about this after this break. Stay with us. Personal hygiene and compliance are precautionary measures outlined by the World Health Organization, form part of awareness campaigns about the coronavirus to rural areas. Well, this is what the governor of Bayelsa, Ovieteme, wants traditional rulers to do in their domains to avert the spread of the scourge. Ovieteme George reports.
With 5 out of 7 patients discharged, Bayelsa is one of the few states with just 2 cases of the coronavirus in its isolation ward in the Niger Delta University Teaching Hospital.
Not too long.
That is not good enough, Governor Ovieteme tells traditional rulers. He wants them to take the COVID-19 awareness campaign to the rural areas.
The corona pandemic has come. We would like to commend you for the way you have handled it. It was very impressive as we came in to see the general public going around confidently, wearing their face masks, looking very assured and confident that something has been done for their safety and welfare.
COVID-19 has no color of APC, it has no color of PDP. It is a pandemic that is global. May I seize the opportunity to call on our royal fathers to go back to your domains and educate your subjects about the deadly nature of COVID-19.
Demolition of illegal structures is ongoing in markets of Yenagoa as part of efforts by the state government to deal with insanitary conditions and insecurity.
We are happy with your projected urban renewal program, and to say that we would like to identify at all times with your government.
Our intention is to keep a clean environment where our mothers and our sisters will not be going to market and be looking back at one rat who will come and snatch their bags and snatch their phones. And our plan is to make that environment decent by building a car park and fencing off that area.
The traditional rulers have pledged to support government to achieve public health and also lift Yenagoa to a status befitting of a capital city. Ovieteme George, TVC News, Yenagoa.
Well, now let's quickly bring in our guests to analyze this matter. I have joining me from Yenagoa, Bayelsa State Capital, TVC News Bureau Chief Ovieteme George, and I still have Uzonna Ononye, TVC News Editor. Good to have you both again on the program tonight. So let's begin with you now, Ovieteme. How enlightened or aware are residents in Bayelsa, particularly in rural communities, about the existence of coronavirus, even as the state relatively has few cases?
Well, I would like to start with a bit of an update. In the recent past, it was just 5 out of 7 cases discharged, but now it's 6 out of 8, meaning just 2 persons are in the isolation ward of the Niger Delta University Teaching Hospital. Now, back to your question, the governor is requesting the assistance and cooperation of the traditional rulers. Now, to some persons, it looks like a myth that the coronavirus does not really infect those who are in the lower rung of society or perhaps in the rural areas. Some see it as an elitist virus that plagues only the high and mighty, the rich and the bourgeois of society. But no, and that was the point of engagement when the governor spoke with the traditional rulers. Go to your rural areas, your domains, the creeks and the hinterlands, and tell them this thing is real. One case is a danger, a potential danger to the entire state, because where cases are not reported on time, that person may have other contacts with others, and contact tracing may be difficult. Community transmission is one thing that's quite difficult. You notice also that demolitions are ongoing in Bayelsa State. It started with the markets, Swale, and now it has moved also to the Opolo markets. Now, these are places where sanitary conditions are not really kept, and that has been a subject of concern over the years. The one about Swale Market is close to the river. There's an abattoir there. They draw water from the stream to wash meat. And there's a jetty there that has been converted to illegal structures. Those things have been pulled down. Now, looking at it technically, this is one state that is in the middle of Rivers and Delta states. Rivers has 89 cases. Now, out of the 89, 59 are active, 23 have recovered, 7 deaths. Now, that is sad enough. Moving over to the left side is Delta State, 31 cases, 13 still active, 12 recovered, 6 deaths. Bayelsa, no death, 6 have been discharged out of 8 cases. Just 2 are just active. So this time around, it's not just about government. The communication now goes down. Besides using the radio and the television stations to take the message down, the people must go down to their domains and hold town hall meetings, sensitize them and let them know that, look, this thing is real. People have died. Nobody has lost a life. No life has been lost, rather, in Bayelsa State. Doesn't mean the state government should rest on its laurels. Recently, the state government took delivery of an 80-bed facility, a mother and child referral center, and it instantly converted it to an isolation center, all in preparation. There is no spike so far in Bayelsa State, but nobody wants to be caught napping. As the world is, many were actually caught napping.
Absolutely. But, you mentioned something about sanitary conditions, which the government is working on. But one particular issue is a safety hygiene, which regards the regular hand washing. And we understand a good number of citizens in the rural communities, like you rightly pointed, lack access to portable water. So what can you tell us about plans to address this concern, even though the government seems to be working on demolishing illegal structures that are breeding grounds for this virus?
You took the words from my mouth. Yeah, when you talked about hygiene, hand washing, all these are actually stipulated and outlined by the World Health Organization and the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. These are normal things that people should be doing, perhaps have been doing, but right now it is compulsory. That, look, this thing is knocking on the doors and the borders of Bayelsa State. Yes, potable water has been a challenge in Nigeria. It's also a challenge in Bayelsa State. But what one can afford to do, one should not have an excuse to do so. Even the sachet water that people drink can be used to wash one's hands. The use of soap and then the precautionary measures, observing social distancing, that is already a knotty issue down here. Well, today was... the Muslims actually celebrated the Eid al, and I noticed something. Talking about social distancing, it wasn't observed at all. These are the issues the governor was actually pointing out, because he had already spoken and addressed the Christian community as well as the Muslim community. That, look, we have to do this thing collectively. It's a battle. It's a virus that doesn't have an identity. It's only called coronavirus, and that's it. You cannot place a hand on it, not even an alert finger. So everybody must observe those routine precautionary measures to avoid a spike. Just 2 cases, one is stable, the other, I really do not know the state of that man because I haven't spoken with him. But the second one there has been stable, hoping to be discharged soon and soon enough.
All right, now let me quickly ask you this because of time, but what can you tell us about the level of testing capacity in the state? What is the government doing with regards to that?
Well, testing has been the problem. Initially, samples were taken from persons suspected to be having ailments related to the coronavirus. The samples were taken to Irua in Edo, Delta State. But now Port Harcourt that's River State, where they can do so. But we got a bit of good news from the Federal Medical Center, Yenagoa, that too can be done here in Bayelsa. I think if it has not already been done by today, in the course of the week, it should have been dealt with. That the machines are available, and officials of the Federal Medical Center, Yenagoa, informed the governor at a COVID-19 task force and update and briefing in Government House.
All right, that's a fine place to leave your thoughts there. But, Uzonna, from what he said so far, there is a lot to be done in rural communities in Nigeria. But this pandemic, no doubt, has reshaped our behavioral patterns. But outside of this, how do you see this affecting social interactions post-COVID-19?
The world may never remain the same after this period. A lot of things are changing already, or have changed already, and may remain so for a long time to come. But what is constant, the only thing that is constant, they say, is change. So people will begin to adjust to all of this. Today, it is easy and very smooth for children to have their classes while at home through through the internet. And quite a lot of things are being done differently from what it used to be. So it will continue in many areas. Businesses are being run remotely and in different ways. But I would like to quickly point out that it is commendable that Bayelsa State government is engaging the traditional rulers. Very, very commendable. But they may have to look deeper, because if you do not test, you wouldn't have cases.
Right.
Lagos has high number of confirmed cases because Lagos has expanded its testing capacity.
Yeah.
And so it is easy to find out people that are infected. But one thing that needs to be pointed out before we go is that Nigeria has not done badly in the battle against COVID-19.
Right.
Nigeria has not done badly, but there is need to do a lot more, particularly in some of those areas where testing had been a challenge. Until testing is carried out widely in those areas, it may be difficult to really know the exact situation, the exact challenge that is facing the country.
Absolutely, I can agree with you more or less. Thank you very much, TVC News editor Uzonna Ononye, and of course, Bureau Chief, South Region, Ovieteme George. We appreciate your insights on the show tonight. And that's all for this episode of Newsweek. Remember, you can follow us on our social media platforms for updates. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using the handle at TVC News NG. You can also get details of all the stories we're reporting on our website, tvcnews.tv. Until the next one, I am Esther Mokwariola. Bye for now.